Hey everybody, Stinky here with a new video. This is my definitive guide to Affliction PvP. This is the last guide you will need for the War Within expansion. This video will give you everything you need to know to get started and to succeed as an Affliction lock in PvP, all forms of PvP in the War Within. There'll be a new guide that will launch once the Midnight expansion hits in a few months, but until then, you have plenty of time to get your ratings goals, get your transmogs, get your weapon enchants, get your pennant from Solo Shuffle, and just kind of kick butt, because even though Affliction is a tough spec to learn and an even tougher spec to master, it is super rewarding once you start blasting and watching everyone's health bars plummet all at the same time. Super, super fun. Here's the video outline. So first I'm going to talk about myself, of course, and then we're going to talk about gear. I'm only going to cover it in very brief, and then I'm going to direct you to my Destro PvP guide, which I just updated a week ago. It has basically the same information you're going to need as a successful Affliction lock, but we'll talk about gear, enchants, gems, all that stuff just in brief in this video. Then we'll go over hero talents, Soul Harvester and Hellcaller. I'll actually spend a little more time on Hellcaller because I think it's an underplayed, underappreciated spec, but Soul Harvester is very, very strong these days too. Then we'll go over every single Warlock talent, Affliction talent, and PvP talent choice, and you'll see that there's a lot of optionality, a lot of ways to customize your character around your playstyle. Then we'll talk rotations. We'll talk first your opener, so you have a strong start to your battle. Then your standard rotation that you'll fall into whenever you're trying to set up your next big burst. And then your burst window, how you're going to seal the deal, get the kill, and the match. And then we'll talk a little bit about playstyle, because Affliction is a pretty unique spec, and you have to have a certain mentality to succeed as an Affliction lock. About myself, I'm a Warlock main. I've been playing Warlock ever since the Burning Crusade. That was back when Affliction was more of a tank spec, very tanky, very durable. And these days, Affliction is totally different, more of a glass cannon. I'm pretty excited about the changes we're going to see in Midnight, the next expansion. Looks like Affliction is going to be pretty fun, very high damage, but also with more sustain. These days I mostly do PvP. I do a lot of Solo Shuffle, a lot of Blitz. You can see here I am currently rank 1 range in Blitz, as well as rank 1 range in all 3 specs in Solo Shuffle. And these days I stream a ton. You can find me at twitch.tv/smellystinky or youtube.com/@smellystinky. Happy to answer questions, happy to teach you about how to play Warlock. Let's dive into the guide. So the first thing is gear, and I just made a video for Destruction Warlocks. It's a Destruction PvP. You can find a link to it in the comment section below. So I recommend checking that out because it goes into detail on Honor, Bloody Token, and Conquest gear, how to craft your pieces, how to get tier sets, all that stuff. What I'm going to say is that Affliction gearing is exactly the same as in Destro. You want to prioritize haste and versatility above all, especially if you do a lot of arena and Solo Shuffle. And then you prioritize mastery, and then lastly crit. You also could go for a haste mastery focused build if you are doing only Blitz and only Battlegrounds, because you can get away with less versatility there. You also want to wear 4 pieces of tier set if you're playing Hellcaller, for sure. If you're playing Soul Harvester, you can get away with just 2 pieces of tier set, but frankly, I think 4 pieces is still worth it. You're going to want to wear 2 embellishments. That's 2 elemental focusing lenses. You can put them anywhere on your jewelry or off pieces. Enchants, just go through the Destro guide. It has all the detail you need on every enchant for every slot. Finally, once again, as a reminder, you do not need to wear any PvE gear whatsoever except for Reshi Wraps, the cloak piece, which you get from doing the quest line in Koresh. I think it's really, really worth getting. And trinkets, you're always going to wear your PvP trinkets no matter what, and you can wear the proc trinket or the badge on use trinket. So again, check out the Destro guide. It has all the detail on gearing, enchants, gems, all that jazz. Regarding races, it's also the same advice I gave in the Destro guide, which is play whatever race you want. It doesn't really matter too much in PvP. I think that the best, if you really want to min-max, the best allied races are still going to be Void Elf, above Night Elf, and other races, but there are plenty of good options. And then Horde side, I do think that High Mountain Tauren has an edge these days because it gives you a little tankiness, but Orc, Undead, Goblin, whatever, they're all pretty good too. Let's talk hero talents. So Soul Harvester and Hellcaller are the 2 choices you have for Affliction, and they're both very good. Soul Harvester definitely is more popular. You can see here, I'm showing the screen from Drustvar. Drustvar tracks a ton of data about PvP, really great website. You can scroll down and see every single purple icon you see here is Soul Harvester, and I'm the only person playing Hellcaller in the top, 20 or 50 Warlocks, whatever. So Soul Harvester definitely has an edge. It is very strong, it has really nice single target burst. Hellcaller is more of a spread pressure type of spec. I think it's very strong, especially in Blitz, but it's also totally viable in solo shuffle and arena as well, so I'm going to show you a lot about Hellcaller too. In a nutshell, the difference between Soul Harvester and Hellcaller is that most of your damage in Soul Harvester is loaded into two things, which is your Malefic Rapture, your Shard Dump. You'll see that there's a lot of talent points here in Soul Harvester tree that are focused on adding to your Malefic Rapture damage. And then you also get a lot of damage from your Haunt Shadowbolt combinations, because your Haunt will give you Nightfall, and your Nightfall procs will do a lot more damage as Soul Harvester. So at the top you'll see this thing called Demonic Soul. This is going to give you succulent soul shards. It's really hard to track actually, but basically the idea is that when you do get a soul shard that's succulent and you spend it on Malefic Rapture, you're going to unleash a lot of extra damage. Part of that is from Soul Anathema here. You can see it's an extra dot that you get whenever you unleash your Demonic Soul. And Demoniac's Fervor over here, this is also going to add to your damage. But the most important thing about Succulent Souls is at the very bottom, Shadow of Death. Every time you cast Soul Rot, it's going to give you 3 soul shards and they're going to be succulent. So you're going to be able to guaranteed get a ton of burst damage right after your Soul Rot. The other thing to track here are Necrolite Teachings, Shared Fate, Quietus, Wicked Reaping. These are basically going to add a ton of damage to your Nightfall procs. So Nightfall is a proc you'll get every now and then that'll give you an instant cast Shadowbolt as an Affliction lock. And whenever you cast Haunt as a Soul Harvester lock, you're going to guarantee get a Nightfall proc. So you'll be able to Haunt Shadowbolt right after. It'll apply a Shared Fate dot to them. It'll do a lot of extra damage. It's a ton of your burst. For the remaining hero talent nodes, you're going to take Friends in Dark Places. It makes you tankier. And you're going to take Eternal Servitude on the right side. It'll just shorten your Fel Domination cooldown by a bit. So later in the video, when I go over rotations, I'll go over the Soul Harvester rotation in detail so you can see exactly how to get the most out of your Soul Harvester hero talents. But again, most of your damage is going to be loaded into Haunt Shadowbolt and your Soul Rot Malefic Rapture dumps. On the Hellcaller side of the tree, it's a little bit different in terms of your damage profile. You'll do a lot more damage through your dots because you're going to apply what's called Wither. See at the top it's Wither, it replaces your Corruption, and a lot of your damage and utility is going to be loaded into your Wither. So while you'll still be casting a lot of the same spells like Soul Rot and Haunt and things like that, a lot of your damage is actually going to be loaded into your dots that are going to be spread on a lot of targets, and a lot of your kill pressure is going to come from your 1 minute cooldown down here at the bottom, Malevolence. Malevolence is going to make all your dots do a lot more damage, especially with your 4-piece tier set. Zalin's Ferocity, Zalin's Cruelty, these just add to your damage. And note that Wither is a Shadow Flame spell, so every time you add to fire damage or shadow damage, it's also going to increase your Wither damage too. Blackened Soul is just an extra damage proc you're going to be getting with your Wither. Bleakheart Tactics, it's going to add to your Blackened Soul damage, and these are pretty significant sources of damage, so it's very strong for Wither. On the right side, you're going to take Zebrim's Resilience because it makes you tankier. On the left side, I usually go with Curse of the Satyr because it's pretty strong, especially when paired with Amplified Curse, because it removes the ability that's for somebody to crit and slows down their casting and attack speeds. But I think you can also run with Aura of Enfeeblement, especially if you're playing Blitz. It can be pretty strong to get the curses on everyone around you when you pop your defensive cooldowns. And the other 3 nodes in here, they just add to your damage. They will add a lot to your damage, but you don't have to plan around them at all. Okay, Warlock Talent points. Left side, you always will take Fel Domination whenever you're running with a pet, because your pet is pretty squishy as an Affliction lock, and it's very important for your utility and your tankiness, so Feldom, very key. These 3 nodes in the center, they just make you tankier, that's all you really need to know about them. On the right side is Burning Rush and Fiendish Stride. These are really powerful talent points in Blitz because you need to get around a map in Blitz very quickly, and battleground maps are very large. But in solo shuffle and arena, you generally will be skipping these talent points because they drain your health very rapidly. Fel Pact on the left, even though you will take Fel Domination pretty frequently, Fel Pact will rarely give you a lot of extra utility, so generally I'll skip this point. Curses of Enfeeblement, so these are very powerful curses. Curses of Tongues, Curse of Exhaustion, they will slow your opponent's casting and slow your opponent's movement speeds. Very powerful in Blitz and arena and solo shuffle. and especially as an Affliction lock because of the PvP talent called Jinx. I'll show you that later. Just know that curses are a very important part of your PvP toolkit. In the center is Demonic Circle Teleport. This is a mandatory point. You absolutely need to take this as a Warlock. You'll be porting back to your circle all the time, especially in PvP. Really important to get familiar with this spell and use it as frequently as you can. On the right, you've got a choice node, and both options are very strong. Personally, I like to play with Mortal Coil a lot because it helps me line up a kill, but Howl of Terror is also very good because you'll often be targeted, especially by melee, and they'll run at you and they'll be in your face, and Howl of Terror will get them away from you, buy you a little bit of time so you can get your casts off. The one thing I'll note is if you go with Howl of Terror, I highly recommend you get the Nightmare talent point down here in the center, because Nightmare will make your Howl of Terror fears last a little longer. On the left is Amplify Curse. This is a very fun, very strong talent point. Definitely get it, especially if you're playing Affliction, because again, you're going to be casting curses all the time as an Affliction lock, and an amplified curse on somebody is going to make their lives just miserable, so really, really powerful. Also, word on the street is that amplified curse is going away in midnight, so take advantage of it while you can. There's a bunch of talent points here that just make you tankier or give you a little bit of damage. You'll always take those talent points. In the center is Abyss Walker, which is actually very powerful. Out here in the world, it only says that it reduces damage you take by 4% after you teleport, but it's actually 8% in Blitz and in Arena, so very, very strong damage reduction cooldown. On the right is Banish, but you can only use it on elementals and demons, so you really only take this node against other warlocks to banish their pet, but even in those situations, I tend to skip this node anyway. Teachings of the Satyr is a really great talent point, but it's hard to afford sometimes in your builds. I take it when I play Blitz pretty often because you're going to be casting your curses basically on cooldown, and getting an amplified curse more frequently is really strong, but it's not really necessary, especially in Arena and Solo Shuffle. Accrued Vitality, this used to be good way back in the day when Drain Life was good, and apparently in Midnight Drain Life might be a little bit better, so I'm kind of excited about that, but currently as it is, Drain Life does very, very little healing, very, very little damage, even when you take talent points in this, so I recommend skipping this point. Sweet Souls, you want to take this. This is just going to give you access to the points below, and it also gives you extra healing, which is good. In the center is Nightmare. Generally, you're just going to skip this unless you go with the Howl of Terror talent point. And then there's Demonic Gateway. This is a great way to get around the map. It's on a longer cooldown in terms of how often you can use it, but it's very key because you don't have very many mobility options. So you're going to be using this and Demonic Circle Teleport all the time, essentially on cooldown. So Dark Pact is the defensive cooldown you're going to be using early and often. Every single minute you're just going to be popping this, and it's going to give you a really nice shield, really strong way to stay tanky. So the center talent point makes your Unending Resolve better. Unending Resolve is really your major defensive cooldown when you're out of all other options and you're under fire. So Strength of Will is definitely what you'll take in Arena and Solo Shuffle, mainly because you typically don't get to cast your Unending Resolve more than once in a match, so reducing the cooldown doesn't matter too much. You just want it to be as strong as possible. But Dark Accord is also very useful, especially in Blitz when you're going to be fighting a lot very frequently and you're going to get a lot of use out of your Unending Resolve. Shadow Fury is one of your very few CC options, crowd control options as an Affliction lock. You definitely take this. It's a big stun, really nice to use it both offensively and defensively. Ichor of Devils and Frequent Donor are both very good options to improve your Dark Pact. They're both good. You can just pick whichever suits your playstyle better. Generally in Blitz I'll go with Ichor of Devils a little bit more because I might be on my own more and I want to preserve my own health. But Frequent Donor tends to be the better option in Arena and Solo Shuffle. For the next node, Socrator's Guile is going to add to your Agony damage. Agony is not a huge source of your damage, but this is still a pretty good node. It's going to add a little bit to your overall damage profile. Not super critical though. You can definitely go with Sargerai Technique, which improves your Shadow Bolt and drains soul damage. As a general rule of thumb, I try to go Sargerai Technique when I'm playing Soul Harvester because Nightfall procs and your Shadow Bolt damage are a huge source of your damage as a Soul Harvester lock. And when I'm playing Hellcaller, because Shadow Bolt is a smaller portion of your damage, I tend to go with Socrator's Guile. Dark Fury and Shadow Flame, you just generally can't afford these nodes as an Affliction lock, so I usually skip them. Swift Artifice, it's only something I would take if I were playing a lot of 3v3 and my games ran super long because you might be resummoning your health stone frequently, but usually you're kind of starved for points in this tree, so I generally skip this node anyway. These three nodes here, these just add to your damage or your tankiness, you're always going to get them. Teachings of the Black Harvest. This is really good when you're playing with a Fel Hunter because it makes them dispel offensively more frequently, which is a very powerful tool. So I do recommend getting this in general when you're playing with a pet. And it also gives you access to Demonic Resilience, which is a very good node for when you need extra tankiness both for yourself and your pet. It will add a lot of tankiness, both to you and your pet, even with just 1 point in this node. On the left is Resolute Barrier. I try to weave this into my Blitz builds sometimes because I think it's really helpful to have Unending Resolve up as often as possible, but you do have to go through Swift Artifice, so it's kind of a wasted talent point there. Generally, I tend to skip this, especially in Solo Shuffle. Pact of Gluttony. This is really important. You definitely want to get this. Your Demonic Health Stone is way better than your normal Health Stone because you can use it every single minute. Very powerful cooldown. You will be using this often. Soul Conduit is going to give you a little extra damage whenever it procs, but usually you're strapped for points, so I skip this point. And then in the bottom right is Soul Burn, which is going to add a ton of utility to your Health Stone, your Teleport, your Gateway, and your Health Funnel. These are all very powerful spells, especially when paired with Soul Burn, so this is a must-have talent point. Alright, Affliction talent points. The first one is Unstable Affliction, and this is central to your rotation. In different expansions and different seasons, Unstable Affliction has varied a lot from doing very little damage and just being Dispel Protection to being a large source of damage. Currently in Season 3 of the War Within, Unstable Affliction is near the top of your damage meter. It is going to do a lot of single target damage as it ticks. The thing about Unstable Affliction is it's a single target dot, but it also does Dispel Protection in that when an enemy healer tries to dispel all the dots from your target, which is super annoying, then they will get a backlash damage hit and they will also be silenced. When you start facing good healers, they're going to dispel Unstable Affliction very frequently. It's extremely annoying as an Affliction lock, but your goal is simply to keep reapplying UA and keep it up as much as possible, especially on your kill target, because it does a lot of damage if it's just sitting there ticking away. Writhe and Agony is going to add to your Agony damage. Agony is their third dot that you're maintaining along with Wither and Unstable Affliction. Not a huge source of damage, but you will be maintaining it on a lot of targets because it's going to give you soul shards as it ticks away. Seed of Corruption, you're basically never going to cast this in PvP. I mean, you can put it on your bars, you can cast it if there's a really clumped up team fight in Blitz maybe, but generally just forget it. Dark Virtuosity, this is not a hugely important talent point, but sometimes you'll get 1 point here when you're playing Soul Harvester. The next node is actually a choice, and generally you're going to go with Absolute Corruption because keeping your Wither up if you're Hellcaller or keeping your Corruption up when you're Soul Harvester, very important to have a high uptime on that, so I would generally go with Absolute Corruption. However, when I played 2v2 and there's only really 2 targets that you need to maintain dots on, and I'm playing Affliction, I'll go with Siphon Life. You just get a little extra damage, a little extra healing. Not massive though. Kindled Malice, you'll definitely take this, as it adds a lot of damage to your Corruption or Wither. Nightfall is the instant cast Shadow Bolt proc that you're going to get every now and then. This is very strong. You definitely take this and you're going to try and use it as often as you can, especially as Soul Harvester. Volatile Agony. So this is not really a huge source of damage, but it is important to spend something up here to get access to points down below. So I'll usually take this, especially if I'm playing Hellcaller, but if I'm playing Soul Harvester, I'll often take this point and stick it in Dark Virtuosity instead. The next talent point is a choice node between Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul. Generally, you're going to go with Shadow Bolt, especially in Blitz, and especially in 3v3 and Solo Shuffle. However, in 2v2, Drain Soul is actually really good. I take it all the time when I play 2v2 with my wife, and Drain Soul is highly effective, especially when somebody is trying to kite and avoid your damage. You can start channeling your Drain Soul and they go behind the pillar. It's going to finish channeling as they go behind the pillar. And I'm going to show you in the PvP talent section later, Rot and Decay. It's going to add duration to your dots whenever you hit them with your Shadow Bolt or your Drain Soul. And your Drain Soul will be ticking on them as they run away. It's going to refresh dots. Really powerful combo. I actually highly recommend Drain Soul just for 2v2, but Shadow Bolt is the better option when you're playing any sort of larger team fights or 3v3 or Solo Shuffle because it's an instant cast spell, you can't get interrupted. The next choice node, you're going to take Summoner's Embrace when you're in 2v2, 3v3, Arena, or Solo Shuffle. Generally speaking, you want to have a pet in those situations because a pet is going to make you tankier. It's going to have a lot of utility because it can spell lock for you from further away or from around a corner. Your pet has offensive dispel. It's really, really nice to have a pet in general. However, Pets can die very easily in certain matchups, like against Moonkin especially, and also in Blitz when there's a huge messy team fight, your pet is going to die super fast. So in those situations, I think Grimoire of Sacrifice is better. You're going to sacrifice your pet, you don't have to worry about it, you don't have to worry about any special like positioning or health funneling your pet. It's a lot easier. And I'll also add, if you're a newer player or if you're new to Warlock and you have never played a pet class before, pet management is actually kind of hard to pick up in the first instance, so go ahead and sacrifice your pet. Totally fine, you're going to get a lot of the utility and power out of it. And as you get more experience and as you get better at the game, or if you do a lot of solo shuffle or arena, then you should definitely learn over time to use Summoner's Embrace. But Grimoire of Sacrifice is a totally legit option as well. On the right, you're always going to take Phantom Singularity in PvP because it does quite a bit of damage and it's instant cast. Vile Taint is targeting on the ground, you have to hard cast it, it's more of a PvE thing. On the left is Haunt. It actually does a fair amount of damage, it's a fairly fast cast, and it's sort of like a Shadow Bolt. You shoot it at your target, and it applies a debuff on them, and they're going to take more damage, so you want to keep your Haunt rolling on your main kill target as often as you can. Really important spell to keep high uptime on. On the right is Shadow Embrace. It's going to apply a debuff every time you Shadow Bolt them or every time your Drain Soul ticks. It's going to be basically a high uptime on your kill targets. You want to make sure Shadow Embrace is up, but don't stress too much about tracking it. Just Shadow Bolt your target as often as you can. Sacrilash's Dark Strike, you're always going to take this. Adds a lot of damage and utility. It's a must-have. Summon Dark Lair. This is central to your burst window every 2 minutes. Your Dark Lair is going to add a ton of kill pressure. It's really strong. The way you use it is you're going to apply your dots to as many targets as possible, especially your kill target. You cast Dark Lair, a ton of damage is going to be happening all across the board, and your dots are going to last a lot longer, so they'll give you more time to get more CC and more damage spells out. On the right is Cunning Cruelty, which is a pretty decent talent point. It's going to add somewhere around 1.5 to 2% to your damage overall, but it's not a must-have node, and you can flip this between this and Malevolent Visionary and some other options, depending on your playstyle. Infirmity, you're always going to take this because it's going to line up with your Phantom Singularity and your burst windows, so you're going to be doing more damage every minute whenever you're popping your Soul Rot Phantom Singularity combos. On the left is Improved Haunt, which I think is really worth taking when you're playing Soul Harvester. You should almost always take it as Soul Harvester. As Hellcaller, it's a little bit more of a choice node. I tend to skip it because there's some other decent options here. And that other option right here, Malediction and Contagion. So these are pretty good talent points when you're playing Hellcaller because they're going to add to your dot damage, and dot damage is a major source of your pressure. However, when you're playing Soul Harvester, you're usually going to skip these two nodes because they add to your crit damage, and crit is generally weaker in PvP overall, and so you're going to get more mileage out of talent points that add to your Malefic Rapture and your Haunt Shadow Bolt damage. So when I play Hellcaller, this is the setup I usually take in general, and I'll go over the rest of the talent points in a second. But when I play Soul Harvester, I'm usually taking things like Cull the Weak, Improved Malefic Rapture, Malefic Touch, and sometimes Focused Malignancy over here as well, because those all add to your Malefic Rapture damage, which is a big source of your kill pressure. On the left is Creeping Death. This is going to add to your dot damage. You always take this. In the center is Soul Rot. Soul Rot is central to your 1 minute goes, so it's going to be adding a lot of kill pressure, especially as Soul Harvester, because you get the Succulent Souls that we talked about earlier, and you're going to be able to dump those into Malefic Raptures and do a lot of extra damage. But even as Hellcaller, you get a lot of mileage out of Soul Rot. It's going to give you some extra damage and extra buffs to yourself, and those are pretty key to getting your kills too. Tormented Crescendo on the right, you're definitely going to take this if you're Soul Harvester. It's going to add a lot to your kill pressure, and it's also pretty good even when you're playing Hellcaller because more instant cast procs are always going to be a good thing, especially after Soul Rot. Xavius's Gambit is something I will take all the time now because Unstable Affliction actually is a major source of your kill pressure. Same thing with Perpetual Unstability. It's going to make it easier to cast your Unstable Affliction, which is huge because you want to keep your uptime on UA up as much as possible, and these days healers spam Dispel UA, so you want to be able to reapply it as quickly as possible after it's dispelled. Next up are Malign Omen and Dark Harvest. These are both excellent points. They're going to add to your Soul Rot 1 minute kill pressure window. They're basically just going to add a lot of extra damage after you Soul Rot. Relinquished, I usually skip this. I don't think you get a lot of utility out of it. I don't think you get a lot of mileage out of extra soul shards that way. But Withering Bolt, you're definitely going to take when you're Soul Harvester because a lot of your damage comes from doing your Haunt Shadow Bolt combos and your Nightfall procs. So definitely take that. I usually skip it as Hellcaller because, once again, most of your damage is loaded elsewhere. Now, Oblivion on the left is really interesting. I think it's sort of the missing piece that Hellcaller Affliction has needed in PvP, and you'll see it when I go over the rotations, but this is central to making Hellcaller work in a solo shuffle and 2v2 and 3v3 setting, because one of the main weaknesses of Hellcaller Affliction in PvP has been, over the last couple seasons, the lack of a single target finisher, because you have weaker Haunt Shadow Bolts and you have weaker Malefic Raptures. However, Oblivion kind of helps fill the gap here, and it lets you do single target burst to a target on your 1 minute go. It's pretty nice. I do recommend trying it out if you are going to play Hellcaller. Death's Embrace, this is not actually that great a node. It sounds pretty cool. I take it when I play Hellcaller because I have nowhere else to put points, but as Soul Harvester, you're usually going to skip this one. Ravenous Afflictions, it sounds good on paper, but it's actually pretty bad. I find that even when I play Soul Harvester, you have really no use for this and you get very few procs out of it anyway, so just skip it. And then finally, Malefic Touch. This is part of that kind of like set of nodes that will add to your Malefic Raptor damage. It's pretty good when you're playing Soul Harvester, not so good when you're playing Hellcaller. PvP Talents. Okay, the first one here, Gateway Mastery. This is very, very good in Blitz because you're going to be using gateways all the time to get across the maps, and the maps are very large, especially maps where there's multiple levels like Temple of Kot Mogu. So very important for that. In solo shuffle and arena, it can be useful. However, I tend to think it's not so great in solo shuffle because you'll be kind of like going so far with your gateway that you can outrange your team, and that can be a liability. But it's really good if you're coordinated with your teammate because you can go all the way across the map, you can reset entirely, get to a safe spot. So it's actually can be useful, but only when coordinated. Essence Drain. I've tested this out recently. I don't think it's very good still because Drain Life is so weak. It does very little healing, very little damage. So even though you stack up your Essence Drain on a target and it'll reduce their damage by 36%, it's still pretty weak. I think it's not worth taking. Rampant Afflictions. This is really bad. You should definitely not take this because Unstable Affliction right now does a lot of your single target damage. So whenever you're trying to kill somebody, you really don't want to be spreading your afflictions because they're going to be doing a lot less damage overall. So generally speaking, you skip this talent point these days. Next is Jinx, and Jinx is the best PvP talent, period. You're going to take this every single time you're playing Affliction, no matter what your hero talent is, no matter whether you're in 2v2 or 3v3, Blitz, Shuffle, whatever. Jinx is awesome. You're going to be casting curses on targets, and it's going to apply both Corruption or Wither and Agony. This is very powerful. This saves a lot of global cooldowns. It's a really great way to spend your shards, a really great way to get your damage rolling quickly when you enter a match. Shadow Rift is a really fun spell, very, very good in Blitz on certain maps where you benefit a lot from displacing a lot of people, like Gilneas, or even Eye of the Storm when you're trying to force an enemy team to cap the flag right on their cap point. It's a really fun spell, lots of potential there. I would not take this in arena or solo shuffle though. Bonds of Fel, this is terrible. I don't even know why it's an option for Affliction locks. Do not take this. Impish Instincts, this is great, especially when you're facing melee or heavy physical damage teams. It'll help you teleport and get around a lot easier. I usually will take this against something like a warrior or a Windwalker monk. Soul Rip is another great option. It's a really good defensive spell because it'll reduce the damage you're taking. It can also reduce the healing that your enemies are taking, which is really nice because you don't have other healing reduction effects as an Affliction lock. Soul Swap is something I never take these days simply because Jinx is a more effective way to kind of get your damage rolling and get dots on different targets. Soul Swap is a little bit more potent because it'll transfer things like your Haunt debuff and your Phantom Singularity, things like that. But generally speaking, it's not quite as effective, and because there's so many good PvP talent options, I usually skip this one. Bloodstones is a surprisingly effective spell with Affliction specifically because just the way that the haste interacts with your dots, you will be doing a ton more damage during your go. You can catch people off guard, but generally speaking, you're going to be better off with your normal health stones because you want to have more defensive cooldowns and utility. So usually you won't take this, but test it out, it's pretty fun. Rot and Decay. This is a really good talent point these days because you want to maintain uptime as much as possible on your dots, and this will help a lot. Especially if you're running something like Drain Soul, Rot and Decay will refresh the durations on your dots like super effectively. I highly recommend trying it out. I take this almost all the time in every situation. Finally, Nether Ward. This is terrific as usual. You're going to be using this against casters or against healers that have CC or they do a lot of damage. It's going to buy you a lot of time when you're trying to get your damage combo going. All right, time to show rotations off. Okay. I'm going to show you Hellcaller first, simply because I like Hellcaller more. Hellcaller is, in my opinion, way more fun, and it's also easier for newer players. I actually highly recommend trying it out if you haven't tried it, because generally speaking, we've all been playing Soul Harvester all of the War Within, but for the first time, because the tier set is actually pretty good for Hellcaller this season, we can play Hellcaller in arenas, in Shuffle, and Blitz, and it's great. Okay, let's talk opener. So your opener as a Hellcaller Warlock and as Soul Harvester, it's the same. You're going to apply your dots using Jinx on as many targets as you can right at the get-go. This will help you roll damage, so apply some pressure. It'll get you soul shards from your agony as it ticks. It's going to get you nightfall procs from your wither or corruption as that ticks, and you're simply going to apply a lot of pressure this way, and it's all instant casts at the start. So you enter, you Jinx, 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 get your dots rolling. Next is Unstable Affliction. You got to get Unstable Affliction up as quickly as possible, and then you want to get Haunt on the target that has Unstable Affliction. That's it. That's your entire opener. It's very simple. The only thing you really need to think about is sort of what curse you're going to be using on your targets. If you're playing Hellcaller, I generally just throw Curse of the Satyr on everybody, maybe Exhaustion on somebody if I think I can kite them, and then if you're playing Soul Harvester, you're going to use some mixture of Curse of Weakness, Curse of Exhaustion, Curse of Tongues, depending on what you think is going to annoy your target the most. Next step, you go into your standard rotation, and again, it's identical for both Soul Harvester and Hellcaller. Very simple. Your standard rotation, maintain your dots, that's it. And maintain your UA, maintain your Jinxes. If you're running low on shards, don't use Jinx, just throw up your dots manually, Agony and Corruption or Wither. And then you're simply going to be using your downtime between refreshing dots. You're going to be using Shadow Bolts, Nightfall procs. You're going to be casting a couple Malefic Raptures if you're going to be overcapping on shards. And especially you're going to be using your utility spells, which are Fear, Shadow Fury, and any other curses or any abilities to kind of like get around the map and try and get control of positioning. So your standard rotation, not a rotation, it's just maintenance of your dots and casting as much utility and filler spells as you can. For your burst window, first I'm going to show you the Hellcaller Burst window. You're going to have your dots on everything, you're going to have Unstable Affliction on your main kill target, Haunt on your main kill target, then you're going to do this. Phantom Singularity, Soul Rot, pop your Dark Glare, hit your Malevolence button, and then start spamming your Soul Shards into Malefic Raptures. Use your Nightfall procs, and then when you want to land the kill, you cast Oblivion. Oblivion is going to channel a ton of damage into your main target. It works really well with Rot and Decay to refresh the dot durations on your kill target while you're channeling it. It's a lot of kill pressure. You're usually not going to get a kill with your first Oblivion, but your second, your third Oblivion, these are all very nice. Now the thing to note about your big burst window is that Dark Glare is on a 2-minute cooldown. So you're only going to be using Dark Glare basically every 2 minutes, and then you're going to have a 1-minute burst window in between your 2 Dark Glares. It's where you're just going to have Phantom Singularity, Soul Rot, and Malevolence, and Oblivion. Now the thing to note is that Phantom Singularity is actually on a shorter cooldown than Soul Rot. You're better off holding it until your Soul Rot is ready because you want to kind of line them up together. You're going to get more impact that way. It's the same thing with Oblivion. You want to hold it until you can cast all your other stuff together because that'll be a lot more offensive pressure. Now I'm going to show you the burst rotation when you play Soul Harvester, and it's almost the same thing, but there's really 2 things you need to keep track of when you're casting your Soul Rot because it's a little bit different because you will be getting 3 succulent shards out of your Soul Rot. So you really want to make sure that you have spent a lot of shards before you go into your kill window. So again, you're going to have your dots up, and then you're going to put your UA and Haunt on your main kill target. Now you don't want to necessarily use your Nightfall procs just yet. You can if you need to set up a little bit more in terms of positioning or get your precogs out of the way. But your kill window, again, cast Soul Rot, Phantom Singularity, Dark Glare. You don't have Malevolence, but you're just going to start spamming all your shards into Malefic Raptures. You're going to use your Nightfall procs, and that is it. No Oblivion, nothing like that. You're simply going to spend, dump your shards, and then you're going to go right back into your standard rotation. Again, with Soul Harvester, it's the same thing where your Dark Glare is on a 2-minute cooldown, so you're only going to use that every 2 minutes, but in between, you're going to get your 1-minute burst windows with your Soul Rot and Phantom Singularity, and then you're also going to be spending those shards in between too. And that's pretty much it for rotations. If you master that, you're actually way ahead of the competition, because Affliction, believe it or not, it sounds pretty simple to describe it. It's really hard to execute in practice because Affliction is simply one of the hardest specs to play in the game. It's very, very challenging, and it's for a very simple reason. You have to cast a lot of stuff, and it's all a single school of magic. It's Shadow. So if you get kicked in Shadow, you can't cast Unstable Affliction, you can't cast Fear, can't apply any dots, you can't even use your defensives. That's how bad it is to get locked out in Shadow. And unfortunately, there are a lot of interrupts in the game. Add on top of that, every healer knows if they see an Affliction lock, they're going to be dispelling like crazy, dispelling on cooldown. And every time somebody gets dispelled, all of your dots are wiped. You have to start all over. It's very frustrating, and it feels like you're constantly just getting completely shut down as an Affliction lock. However, the benefit of playing Affliction is that you can really apply crazy amounts of offensive pressure, and you can top the damage meter in most lobbies almost no matter who's in the lobby with you, and no matter how much you're getting shut down. Affliction is very powerful because a lot of your damage is loaded into instant casts, and you simply have to learn how to weave around those, weave around interrupts, and reapply quickly once a healer dispels your dots. So don't get discouraged if you're having trouble early on in your Affliction career. If you're new to Warlock, new to PvP, new to Affliction, you will get shut down, you will have trouble. Everyone goes through that process. You simply have to push through, and you will become better and better at applying pressure no matter what's going on around you, and you can simply win games through sheer damage pressure, and that's very, very fun. So I've told you why Affliction is hard to play, but the thing is, Affliction is extremely rewarding when you play it well, because when you get past all those interrupts, when you get past all the dispels, and you're still applying dots, applying pressure, you are putting the enemy team on a timer. They are gonna run out of time at some point, and they're all gonna die if they don't kill you. It's kind of a very fun, very dynamic playstyle. You can play very aggressively. You don't have a lot of CC, so you don't spend a lot of time trying to stun people or coil them or fear them, because that's simply not as effective as doing a ton of damage and forcing your enemy to play defensively themselves. That's kind of the trick to playing Affliction very well, is your best defense is a good offense, and you simply blast away, top the meters, and get some wins. As a final note, I'll say that Affliction right now is not the most flexible spec. If you're playing 3v3, you really only have a few options. You can play with a rogue, you can play with maybe some other high damage class that gives you a lot of crowd control, like a feral, just basically somebody who will buy you more time so you can get your damage rolling. Or you can play with another caster, but those tend to be a little bit weaker these days than if you play Destro or Demo. So you have limited options in terms of team comps, but it's very, very, very good in Blitz, because if you're just doing nothing but spamming Curse of Exhaustion with Jinx on everybody, you're doing a ton for your team. Lots of damage, lots of utility. And it's also very good in 2v2, and also just in Shuffle in general, very strong class. But what I really want to emphasize is that all the changes coming to Warlock, in Affliction Warlock in particular, in the Midnight expansion coming out early next year, they look really good. They look really, really, really good. So right now, Affliction's biggest problem is it has basically no self-sustain, because your Drain Life got super nerfed in this expansion for some reason, and your single target damage is decent but not amazing. You have decent rot, but you have pretty poor single target damage. Those are addressed in Midnight as far as I can tell. You're going to have a way better Oblivion-like channel where you do a lot of damage, you can stack UA on the same target, and you have some more drain life kind of capability. It all looks very promising. I think it'll be a lot of fun to test it out. So now is actually a very good time to start learning Affliction Lock, trying to master it, and hitting the ground running once the Midnight expansion launches. And that's it. That's the guide. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. Now, it's not possible to cover everything about Affliction Warlocks in a single video, so drop by my streams, twitch.tv/smellystinky, or ask a question in the comment section below. Happy to answer questions, happy to teach everyone, both old and new players, how to play Warlock, how to play PvP in general, Blitz, Arena, whatever. Hope to see you all there. Hope to see you in the arenas, in the battlegrounds, and everybody have a great one. Peace.